Welcome to your deep dive. This one is all about Mark Manson's The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Feck.
Oh, yeah, this one's great.
It's a title that, when you requested it,
Yeah,
I have to admit I was a little thrown off.
it's definitely an attention grabber.
Yeah, but after diving in, I can assure you this isn't just some, edgy self-help book telling you to be completely detached
Yeah.
and, emotionless.
No, it's not that at all.
It's way more nuanced than that.
Yeah, a lot more nuanced.
So much more.
Yeah, it's really interesting how he approaches it.
Yeah.
He just dives straight into, the messiness of being human
Yeah.
and challenges a lot of what we've been told about happiness and success.
Totally.
And, he throws a curveball right at the beginning
Okay.
with this anecdote about Charles Bukowski,
Okay.
who was a writer.
I'm familiar.
Let's just say he was not known for his conventional lifestyle.
Right, kind of a gruff character.
Yeah, kind of like a...
I mean, the guy's tombstone literally reads, "Don't try." Exactly.
Yeah, which is not exactly like the typical self-improvement mantra.
Yeah, not exactly what you would expect.
But here's the thing.
Yeah.
Bukowski actually achieved a level of success that many writers only
Yeah.
dream of.
Exactly.
So how does that square with don't try?
Right. What's the takeaway?
What's the takeaway here?
Yeah, well, that's where Manson's brilliance comes in.
Okay.
He argues that it was Bukowski's comfort with failure,
Okay.
his
Yeah.
willingness to just be completely himself, flaws and all,
Yeah.
that allowed him to connect with readers in such a powerful way.
Okay.
And he suggests that, in a world that's obsessed with perfection, embracing our imperfections can be like this radical act of rebellion and maybe even the key to unlocking our own unique potential.
Okay. I like that.
What do you think? Does that resonate with you at all?
Oh, absolutely. I think we all feel that pressure
Yeah.
to present this perfect image,
Right.
especially online.
Oh, yeah, especially online.
And it's refreshing to hear someone say, totally.
Hey, it's okay to not be perfect.
Yeah.
It's okay to embrace the messiness of life.
And that's really the heart of Manson's philosophy.
Okay.
It's about letting go of this need to be perfect and focusing on what truly matters to us.
Okay.
He calls this not giving a feck,
Right.
but it's not about apathy or indifference.
Right.
It's about choosing what we invest our energy in,
Yeah.
what problems we're willing to solve,
Okay.
and what we're willing to let go of.
So it's about being selective
Yeah.
with our energy and our attention.
Yeah.
But how do we decide what to focus on?
Right.
What's the criteria?
That's where our values come in.
Okay.
Manson argues that the quality of our lives
Okay.
depends on the values we choose to prioritize.
Okay.
He even breaks it down into shitty values and good values.
I like it already.
Yeah, it's pretty brilliant.
Give me an example
Okay.
of a shitty value.
Okay, so think about values that lead to unsolvable problems.
Okay.
Or are based on external validation.
Okay.
So things like the constant pursuit of pleasure,
Got it.
material success, needing to always be right.
Yeah.
Or this idea that we have to be positive all the time.
Right.
These values, he argues, are traps
Okay.
that keep us on what he calls the hedonic treadmill.
Oh, the hedonic treadmill. I've heard of this.
You've heard of this?
Yeah.
So it's constantly chasing something that's just out of reach.
So if I'm constantly seeking external validation,
Right.
let's say through social media likes,
Yeah,
I'm setting myself up for disappointment
exactly.
because that validation is ultimately fleeting
Right.
and outside of my control.
Exactly. And it prevents you from developing a sense of self-worth
Okay.
that comes from within.
Got it.
Good values, on the other hand,
Yeah.
lead to meaningful growth and a sense of fulfillment
Okay.
that isn't dependent on external factors.
I like that.
So these are values like honesty, vulnerability, taking responsibility for our actions, and embracing the challenges that come with pursuing something meaningful.
So choosing good values over shitty values
Yeah,
seems like a pretty crucial first step.
definitely.
Then how do we
Yeah.
actually start living
Yeah.
in accordance with those values?
So that's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Manson introduces this concept.
Yeah.
He calls practical enlightenment.
Tactical enlightenment.
Yes, and it's not about achieving some mystical state of transcendence.
Okay.
It's about becoming comfortable with the fact that
Yeah.
life is going to be tough. There will be struggles,
Yeah.
failures, and disappointments.
So it's about accepting the reality
Yeah,
that life isn't always sunshine and rainbows.
precisely.
Okay.
And that acceptance, that willingness to embrace
Yeah.
the full spectrum of human experience
Yeah.
is actually incredibly empowering.
Okay.
It frees us from this unrealistic expectation that we should be happy all the time.
Yep.
And allows us to find meaning and purpose in the midst of the inevitable challenges
Totally.
that life throws our way.
That makes a lot of sense, I
Yeah.
think. We often get so caught up in this pursuit of happiness that we forget that it's not a constant state.
Exactly.
It's something that ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
And maybe it's in those moments of challenge, in those moments of darkness,
Right.
that we actually discover
Yeah,
our strength and resilience.
absolutely. And Manson uses this powerful parable
Okay.
about a prince
Yeah.
who is given everything he could ever want.
Okay.
Luxury, comfort, endless entertainment.
Yeah.
But he's still deeply unhappy.
Wow.
He runs away,
Okay.
seeking enlightenment through suffering,
Oh, interesting.
only to discover that suffering, just like pleasure,
Okay.
doesn't lead to lasting fulfillment.
So it's not the answer.
No.
So what is the answer?
So the key takeaway here
Yeah.
is that true happiness doesn't come from avoiding problems
Okay.
or chasing fleeting feelings. It comes from finding meaning in the struggle, in
Interesting.
the process of solving problems.
So it's not about seeking out pain,
No.
but it's about finding meaning in the inevitable challenges
Exactly.
that life throws our way.
Yeah.
So what kind of problems should
Yeah.
we be focusing on then?
That's where our values come back into play.
Okay.
The quality of our happiness depends on the types of problems we choose to solve.
Okay.
And that, in turn, depends on the values we choose to prioritize.
Got it.
So if you're constantly chasing pleasure or external validation,
Sure.
you're likely to end up feeling empty and unfulfilled,
Yeah.
no matter how much you achieve.
So it's not about how much you achieve,
Right.
but it's about what you're achieving.
Yeah, what are you actually going after?
And why.
Exactly.
So it's not about avoiding problems altogether.
No.
It's about choosing the right problems.
Choosing the right problems.
The problems that are actually worth solving.
Yes.
And the key to choosing the right problems lies in understanding our values
Exactly.
and choosing good values over shitty values.
Yeah.
But how do we even go about,
Right.
like, uncovering those values?
Well, that's the journey, right?
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of this book is about.
Okay.
It's about that process of understanding and choosing our values.
Okay.
And it requires a willingness to be honest with ourselves, to confront our own biases and assumptions,
Yeah.
and to be open to the possibility
Yeah.
that what we think we want
Yeah.
might not actually be what we need.
Oh, right. I think we often get so caught up in what we're supposed to want.
Yes.
What
it will.
society tells us
Yeah,
is important that we lose sight of what truly matters
exactly.
to us as individuals.
Yeah, and Manson talks about this phenomenon.
Okay.
He calls it the tyranny of exceptionalism,
Tyranny of exceptionalism.
and how it distorts our perception of what's normal and achievable.
Okay.
We're constantly bombarded with images of success,
Right.
wealth,
Yeah.
perfect bodies.
Of course.
And it's easy to start feeling like we're not measuring up. But the reality is those images are often curated, edited,
Yeah.
and completely unrealistic for most of us.
Yeah. And we know that, but we still
buy into it.
get sucked in by it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Manson encourages us to question those external expectations,
Okay.
to tune out the noise,
Yeah.
and to focus on what truly resonates with our own values and aspirations.
So much easier said than done, though.
It is definitely easier said than done.
Now, how do we even start?
Right.
How do we start tuning out that noise?
Yeah.
And focusing on what truly matters?
Well, that's what we'll delve into in part 2.
Okay.
We'll explore Manson's insights on self-awareness,
Okay.
the importance of taking responsibility for our own lives, and how to break free from those limiting beliefs
Yeah.
that keep us from pursuing what truly matters.
Okay.
So stay tuned for that.
I can't wait. I will be here.
Awesome.
See ya.
There.
Welcome back. Last time we were talking about choosing good values over shitty values.
Right.
And how important it is to accept that
Yeah.
life is going to be tough sometimes.
Right. And that accepting reality, even the difficult parts,
Yeah.
is what Manson calls practical enlightenment.
Okay.
This is all about finding meaning in those struggles
Okay.
rather than running from them.
Yeah, I'm really intrigued by this concept of practical enlightenment. So it's
Yeah.
not about becoming some
Okay.
sort of Zen master,
Right.
but about facing the messiness of life head on.
Exactly. And that willingness to face the messiness,
Yeah.
to be honest with ourselves about our own flaws and shortcomings, is essential for growth.
Okay.
Manson uses this analogy of what he calls the VCR question to illustrate this point.
Okay.
So imagine someone struggling to figure out how to use a VCR
Okay.
for the first time.
I can already tell where this is going.
Yeah.
Oh.
To an outsider, the solution seems obvious.
Of course.
But the person struggling with the question feels completely lost.
I think we've all felt that way.
Oh, yeah.
At some point, right?
Absolutely.
Stuck on a problem that seems insurmountable, even though
Yeah.
the solution might be staring us right in the face.
Manson argues that these VCR questions often stem from a fear of pain, a reluctance to take responsibility for our own choices and actions.
Yeah. So it's easier to just say, like, I don't know how to do this.
Right.
I can't figure this out.
Exactly.
Than to actually take the steps to figure it out.
And he gives some compelling examples in the book. Okay. The medical student who's miserable but terrified to drop out.
Okay.
The guy who's crushing on his tutor but too scared to ask her out.
Okay.
The single mother whose adult children are still living at home but she's too afraid to ask them to move out.
So these are all situations where the answer might seem obvious to someone else, but the person involved is paralyzed by fear.
Precisely. And that fear, he suggests, is often rooted in some deeper insecurity, some belief about ourselves that we're afraid to challenge.
Like a fear of failure, maybe.
Right, exactly.
Or a fear of the unknown.
Exactly.
Yeah,
maybe the medical student is clinging to the idea that they have to be a doctor because it's what they've always told everyone.
Yeah.
Even if it makes them unhappy.
Even if they're miserable.
Right.
Doing it.
The guy crushing on his tutor might be afraid of rejection.
Right.
Because he doesn't believe he's worthy of her affection.
Or maybe she's just not interested.
Right, exactly. And the single mother might be afraid of being alone.
Yeah.
Or being seen as a failure if her kids move out.
Right.
So there's all these underlying fears.
Yeah. It sounds like there's a lot of fear.
Yeah.
Driving these decisions.
Absolutely. And so how do we break free from those fears?
Right. That's the question.
Yeah. How do we start challenging those beliefs that might be holding us back?
That's what I want to know.
Well, that's where Manson's do something principle comes in. Yeah. It's a deceptively simple concept, but incredibly powerful.
Oh, okay.
If you're feeling stuck, unmotivated, or overwhelmed, take action. Do anything, even if it's small.
I like that.
Manson actually struggled with this himself when he was first starting his blog.
Oh, really?
He was filled with self-doubt, procrastinated constantly, and was terrified of failing.
I think a lot of us can relate to that.
Oh, yeah.
Feeling of being paralyzed by fear, especially when it comes to pursuing something new or challenging.
Absolutely. And that's why the do something principle is so important. It's about breaking free from that paralysis. About shifting our focus from the outcome to the process.
So instead of getting overwhelmed by the thought of writing an entire book, you could just tell yourself, okay, I'm just going to write one page today.
Right. Just start somewhere.
Just start. And who knows?
Exactly.
That one page might spark the motivation to keep going.
It might. And that's the thing. Action often precedes motivation. By simply starting even in a small way. We can create momentum and inspiration.
So it's like that classic saying, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step.
Exactly.
But sometimes that first step can feel so daunting.
It can be daunting, and that's where Manson's advice comes in. Break it down into smaller, more manageable actions. Don't focus on the enormity of the goal. Just focus on the next immediate step.
Just that next step.
Right. And here's the thing. Action often precedes motivation. By simply starting, even in a small way, we can create momentum and inspiration.
So it's not about waiting for the perfect moment or the perfect plan.
Not at all.
It's about taking that first step and trusting that the path will unfold as we go.
Exactly. And sometimes that path will lead to failure.
Yeah, of course.
But here's where Manson's perspective on failure is so refreshing. He argues that we're so conditioned to avoid failure that we miss out on the opportunities for growth and learning that come with taking risks.
That makes sense.
He uses the example of Pablo Picasso to illustrate this point. When Picasso was an old man, a woman asked to buy a napkin he had been doodling on. Picasso told her it would cost $20,000.
Wow.
The woman was shocked, saying it only took him a few minutes to draw it. And Picasso replied, "No, ma'am. It took me over 60 years to draw this."
Wow, that's an incredible story.
It is.
It really highlights the point that those overnight success stories we often hear about are usually the result of years of hard work, dedication, and, yes, failure.
And failure, absolutely.
And Manson argues that we need to embrace that process, to become comfortable with the idea that failure is not the opposite of success.
Right.
It's part of it.
Part of the journey.
He even goes so far as to say that we can only truly be successful at something.
Yes.
We're willing to fail at.
Exactly.
If we're unwilling to fail.
Right.
Then we're unwilling to really push ourselves and grow.
Absolutely.
It's a powerful reframing of failure.
Yeah.
It's not something to be avoided, but rather something to be embraced as a necessary part of the learning process.
Exactly. And that learning process often involves pain.
Okay.
Manson doesn't shy away from the difficult realities of life.
Okay.
In fact, he argues that pain is essential for personal development.
Okay, that's an interesting perspective.
It is.
How could pain possibly be a good thing?
Well, think about it this way. Just as our muscles grow stronger, when we push them to their limits,
okay,
our emotional resilience and sense of self can grow stronger when we face challenges and overcome adversity.
Interesting.
He talks about the work of the Polish psychologist Kazimierz Dabrowski, who studied World War II survivors. Dabrowski found that many of these survivors believed that their wartime experiences, while undeniably traumatic, had actually made them stronger, more resilient, and even happier.
That seems so counterintuitive.
It does.
How could such horrific experiences possibly lead to positive transformation?
Well, Dabrowski argued that pain, whether physical or emotional, can be a catalyst for growth. It forces us to confront our deepest fears, to reassess our values, and to develop a deeper appreciation for the preciousness of life.
Right, because if you've gone through something like that, you realize that your problems are maybe not so big.
Exactly. It puts things in perspective.
Right.
So it's not about seeking out pain or suffering.
No.
But about recognizing that it's an inevitable part of life.
Yeah.
And that we have the power to choose how we respond to it.
Okay, so we can't always choose what happens to us.
Right.
But we can choose how we react.
Exactly. And that's where Manson's concept of practical enlightenment comes back into play.
Okay.
It's about accepting that life will inevitably involve pain, loss, and disappointment. It's about choosing to see those experiences not as setbacks, but as opportunities for growth and learning.
So even when something bad happens, there's a lesson to be learned.
There's always a lesson to be learned.
There's always a silver lining.
Yeah, it's a challenging perspective.
Yeah.
But it's also incredibly empowering.
Absolutely.
It suggests that we're not victims of our circumstances.
Yeah.
But rather architects of our own experience.
Right. We have the power
to
choose how we respond to things.
Even in the face of adversity.
That's powerful.
It is. And a crucial part of being the architect of your own experience is choosing your values wisely.
Okay.
The quality of our lives truly does depend on what we choose to prioritize.
You know, he makes a really good point about how we often become more attached to being right than to being happy.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, we cling to our beliefs even when they're causing us pain because it's easier than facing the discomfort of being wrong.
It's true. We create these narratives about ourselves,
about
the world.
Right.
And then we filter all our experiences through those narratives.
Right.
And sometimes those narratives are based on limited information or outdated beliefs that no longer serve us.
So how do we start to identify and challenge those narratives that might be holding us back?
Well, it starts with self-awareness.
Okay.
Manson encourages us to question our assumptions.
Yeah.
To be willing to consider alternative perspectives.
Okay.
And to hold our beliefs lightly.
Okay.
Recognizing that they are always subject to change as we learn and grow.
So to be open-minded, basically.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And that requires a lot of humility.
Yeah.
A willingness to admit that we don't have all the answers.
Totally.
And that humility is essential for growth.
Okay.
It's only when we're willing to question our beliefs that we can open ourselves up to new information, new possibilities, and ultimately a richer, more meaningful experience of life.
So it's not about having a perfect set of beliefs.
No, boy.
But about being open to questioning.
Right. And refining those beliefs. As we learn and grow.
Exactly. It's about embracing the journey of continual self-discovery.
Okay.
Rather than clinging to a fixed sense of self or a rigid set of beliefs.
Right. So it's a constant evolution.
Yeah, it's a process.
Okay.
And that journey, as Manson emphasizes, inevitably involves rejection.
Rejection.
Both giving and receiving it.
Okay. I'm curious to hear more about that.
Yeah.
How does rejection fit into this whole idea of choosing our values and living a more fulfilling life?
Well, Manson uses his own experiences traveling the world to illustrate this point.
Okay.
He initially thought he wanted to experience everything equally, to be open to every possibility.
Right.
But he came to realize that this constant pursuit of new experiences, this avoidance of commitment, actually prevented him from finding true meaning and connection.
It's like spreading yourself too thin.
Exactly.
If you're constantly saying yes to everything, you're not truly committing to anything.
Yeah.
And you might end up missing out on those deeper, more fulfilling experiences.
Exactly. Manson argues that true freedom comes from choosing what to commit to.
Okay.
And that inevitably involves rejecting alternatives.
Okay, so you have to say no to some things in order to say yes to.
Yes, to the things that really matter.
To the right things.
Exactly.
Think about it in the context of your own life.
Yeah.
How often do you say yes to things out of obligation or fear of missing out, even when those commitments drain your energy and pull you away from what truly matters?
I think we've all been there.
I know I have, for sure.
It's so easy to get caught up in that cycle of busyness and trying to please everyone.
Right.
And it's ultimately unsustainable.
Yeah, you can't do it all.
You can't do it all. Manson suggests that saying no to the good so that you can say yes to the great
I like that.
is a powerful way to reclaim your time and energy.
And focus on what truly aligns with your values.
That makes a lot of sense. It's not about being negative or shutting people out. It's about making conscious choices.
Exactly.
About where we direct our energy and attention.
Precisely. And those choices, those rejections, are ultimately a reflection of our values.
Okay.
They tell us what we truly prioritize.
Yeah.
What we're willing to fight for.
Okay.
And what we're willing to let go of.
So it's about defining those boundaries.
Yes, absolutely.
And sometimes those rejections can be difficult.
Yeah.
Even painful.
But it can be tough.
I imagine it can be challenging to let go of certain opportunities or relationships.
Yeah.
Even if we know they're not serving us.
Absolutely. Manson talks about how for much of his life, he struggled with commitment issues, both in relationships and in his own personal pursuits.
Right. So this is something he's dealt with.
Yeah, he's been there.
Personally.
He was afraid of being tied down, of missing out on other possibilities.
So it sounds like he was chasing freedom.
Right.
But in a way that was ultimately self-defeating.
Exactly. He eventually realized that true freedom wasn't about having unlimited options.
Yeah.
It was about choosing the right options and committing to them fully.
And that commitment requires setting boundaries, right?
Absolutely.
Both in our personal lives and in our relationships.
Manson is a big proponent of setting healthy boundaries.
Okay.
He talks about how entitlement is both our own and that of others, can sabotage our relationships and prevent us from experiencing genuine intimacy and connection.
Interesting. So how do we go about setting those boundaries?
Right.
What does that look like in practice?
Well, it starts with being honest with ourselves about our needs and limits.
Okay.
What are we willing to tolerate?
Yeah.
What are our non-negotiables?
Right. What are we not willing to budge on?
Exactly. And then it's about communicating those boundaries clearly and assertively to others.
So you have to speak up.
Right. You have to be willing to say, hey, this is what I need.
Right.
This is what I'm not okay with.
This is my line.
Exactly. Manson even talks about how he applies this in his own marriage.
Yeah.
Using a rather humorous anecdote about his wife asking him how she looks.
I remember that story.
Yeah.
He's brutally honest with her.
He is.
Even when it's not what she wants to hear.
Right.
But somehow it works for them.
It does, and that's because that honesty, even when it's uncomfortable, is a sign of respect and trust.
Okay.
It's about prioritizing the long-term health of the relationship.
Right.
Over temporary discomfort or ego stroking.
That makes sense if you can't be honest with your partner.
Right.
Who can you be honest with?
Exactly. And that honesty, even when it's tough, is what builds true intimacy and connection.
So being honest, even when it's hard, actually strengthens the relationship.
It does. It's about accepting each other's flaws.
Okay.
Knowing that you can rely on each other for support and honest feedback, even when it's not easy to hear.
That's a really good point. It's a great example of how vulnerability and honesty, even when it's uncomfortable, can actually strengthen our connections with others.
And that vulnerability, that willingness to be honest about our feelings and needs is essential for building trust.
Trust.
Which Manson argues is the most important ingredient in any healthy relationship.
I would have to agree with that.
He even goes into detail about how to rebuild trust after it's been broken.
Okay.
emphasizing the importance of acknowledging the underlying values that led to the breach.
Yeah, so like what caused the breakdown in trust in the first place?
And demonstrating a consistent track record of changed behavior.
So it's not just about saying sorry.
No, it's about actually changing your actions.
Right, you have to put in the work.
Exactly. Trust is not something that can be demanded or forced.
Okay.
It's something that has to be earned through consistent action and integrity.
Okay, so you have to show that you're trustworthy.
Right.
Not just say it.
Exactly. And this idea of taking action, of demonstrating our commitment through our behavior, is really at the heart of Manson's philosophy.
Okay, so it all comes back to the do something principle.
Yeah.
It's about taking those small steps, even when we're afraid.
Right.
And trusting that the momentum will build as we go.
Absolutely. And that principle applies to all areas of our lives.
Okay.
Not just our relationships.
So it's not just about doing something. It's about doing something that aligns with our values.
Yes.
That moves us closer to the life we want to create.
Right. And that brings us to another crucial aspect of Manson's philosophy.
Okay.
The idea that our values are not just personal preferences, but they are also a reflection of our immortality projects.
Right. We touched on this concept earlier.
We did.
It's the idea that we're all driven by this unconscious desire to leave a legacy, to create something that will outlast our physical existence.
Exactly.
But I'm still a little fuzzy on how this connects to our values.
Okay.
Can you elaborate on that?
Of course. Manson draws on the work of Ernest Becker, who argued that this fear of death, this drive for immortality, is a fundamental aspect of the human condition.
We don't want to just disappear.
We want to leave our mark.
Right.
And our values, Manson suggests, are often expressions of this drive.
Okay.
They represent our attempts to create meaning, to make a difference, to leave a mark on the world.
So our values are not just about what we enjoy or what makes us happy in the moment.
It's bigger than that.
They're also about how we want to be remembered.
Yeah.
How we want our lives to matter in the grand scheme of things.
Exactly. And this awareness of death, this recognition of our own mortality, can actually be a powerful motivator.
Okay.
It can help us to clarify our priorities.
Okay.
To focus on what truly matters.
Right.
And to live with a greater sense of purpose and urgency.
It's a sobering thought.
It is.
But it's also incredibly liberating if we accept that our time is finite.
That we won't live forever.
Right.
It can free us to pursue our passions.
Yes.
To take risks and to live more fully in the present moment.
Absolutely.
But it can also be a bit overwhelming. Right?
This can be.
I mean, how do we even begin to wrap our minds around the concept of our own mortality?
Well, that's what we'll explore in part 3. We'll delve into Manson's insights on how facing our mortality can actually empower us to live more authentically and meaningfully. We'll also examine his concept of practical enlightenment in more detail. And see how it can help us navigate the inevitable challenges and uncertainties of life.
Okay, I'm really looking forward to that conversation.
Yeah, me too.
See you there.
Sounds good. Welcome back to our deep dive into Mark Manson's The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Feck. We've covered so much ground already.
It's a dense book.
So many great ideas. And one of the things that really stood out to me was that story about the prince.
Oh, yeah.
Who had everything he could possibly want.
Right. He had all the luxury, all the comfort.
But he was still miserable.
Still unhappy.
Yeah. And I think it really drives home the point that true happiness isn't about...
It's not about avoiding problems.
Avoiding problems, right?
It's about finding meaning in the struggle.
Yeah. And it kind of leads us to this idea that choosing the right problems to solve is key.
Absolutely.
And those choices should be guided by our values.
Yeah, by what truly matters to us.
But as we've been discussing, figuring out what those values are, what truly matters to us, can be a lifelong process.
It's a journey for sure.
Yeah, and Manson talks about this concept of practical enlightenment, right?
He does.
And it's not about achieving some blissful state of detachment.
It's not about transcending the human experience.
Right, but about coming to terms with the fact that life is inherently messy and challenging.
And that it's often in those moments of intense struggle, when our carefully constructed worldviews crumble around us, that we're forced to confront what truly matters.
Right. Like when everything's going well, it's easy to just kind of coast.
Exactly. We can just kind of go through the motions.
But when something bad happens, that's when we really have to figure out...
That's when the rubber meets the road.
What we stand for.
Exactly. And Manson even goes so far as to say that the most radical changes in perspective often happen at the tail end of our worst moments.
That's interesting.
It is, isn't it?
Wow, those like shit storms, as he calls them.
Yeah, he uses that term.
They can actually be opportunities for growth.
They can be, because they force us to reevaluate what's important, what we're willing to fight for.
It's like a crucible that burns away all the superficial stuff.
Yeah, I like that analogy.
And leaves us with the raw essential elements.
Right, it gets down to the core.
Of who we are and what we stand for.
Exactly, and in those moments of intense pain, we might be more open to questioning our values.
Okay.
To letting go of what's no longer serving us, and to embracing a new way of seeing the world.
It's like we need those moments of darkness.
Right.
To appreciate the light.
Exactly. But of course, Manson isn't suggesting that we should go looking for pain or suffering.
No, he's not saying go out and actively seek out bad things.
No, he's simply acknowledging that it's an inevitable part of the human experience.
Right, it's going to happen.
It's going to happen.
Sooner or later.
And we have a choice in how we respond to it.
Okay, so we can't always choose what happens to us.
Right.
But we can choose how we react.
Exactly. And that's something we've been talking about a lot.
And one of the things that really resonated with me was his emphasis on taking responsibility.
Oh, absolutely.
It's so easy to fall into the trap of blaming others.
Right. It's so much easier to point the finger.
Yeah, for our problems, for our unhappiness.
Yeah, it's a very human tendency.
But as Manson points out, that blame game ultimately keeps us stuck.
It does. It keeps us from moving forward.
Yeah, it prevents us from taking ownership of our own lives.
Right.
And making the changes we need to create a more fulfilling experience.
He makes a great point about the difference between fault and responsibility.
Yes. I love.
We might not be at fault for everything that happens to us.
Right.
But we're always responsible for how we choose to respond.
I love that distinction.
It's a powerful one, isn't it?
Yeah.
He uses the example of someone being robbed.
Okay.
You're not at fault for being robbed.
You know, of course not.
But you are responsible for how you choose to move forward from that experience.
Okay.
Do you let it define you?
Right.
Or do you choose to learn from it, to grow from it, to use it as fuel for positive change?
So it's about how you choose to frame.
Yeah. How you choose to see it.
The experience.
And that ties back to the idea that we are the architects of our own experience.
Yeah, we might not be able to control everything that happens to us.
Life is unpredictable.
But we can choose how we respond, how we let those experiences shape us.
And that choice, that act of taking responsibility, is ultimately what empowers us to create a life that is aligned with our values.
That's powerful.
It is. And it brings us back to this whole idea of not giving effect.
Yeah. How does this all connect?
Right, because it's not about being indifferent or apathetic.
Right. It's not about just not caring about anything.
No, it's about choosing what to care about.
Okay.
What to invest our energy in, and what to let go of.
I feel like there's a bit of a paradox there.
Yeah, I can see that.
How can we not give effect and still care deeply about things?
Right. Well, that's the beauty of Manson's approach.
Okay.
It's all about nuance and recognizing that caring deeply about something often means letting go of other things that might be distracting us or holding us back.
So you can't care about everything.
Right. You have to be selective.
You have to prioritize.
Exactly. And he talks a lot about the importance of challenging our narratives.
Oh, yeah, the stories we tell ourselves.
Right. Those stories we tell ourselves about who we are and what's possible for us.
And those can be really powerful.
They can be incredibly powerful, and they can be really limiting.
Yeah, how so?
Well, we often create these narratives based on limited information, past experiences, or societal expectations.
Okay.
And those narratives can become self-fulfilling prophecies.
Okay.
If we believe we're not good enough, we're destined to fail.
Yeah.
Then we're likely to act in ways that confirm those beliefs.
It's like we're trapped in a mental prison of our own making.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Manson encourages us to question those narratives.
Okay.
To challenge those limiting beliefs and to open ourselves to new possibilities.
I like that.
He uses a great example from his own life about his dating vlog.
Oh, yeah. What about that?
He initially started it as a way to document his rather chaotic dating life.
Okay.
But it eventually evolved into something much bigger.
Okay.
A platform where he could share his unique perspective on life relationships and personal growth.
So it started as one thing,
Yeah.
but it transformed into something completely different.
Exactly. And it's a great example of how taking action,
Yeah.
even when we're not sure where it will lead,
Even when we don't have it all figured out,
right,
can open us up to unexpected opportunities and growth.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And that willingness to take action, to embrace uncertainty is a recurring theme in his book. He argues that we're so conditioned to avoid failure.
Right. We don't want to mess up.
To seek certainty and control.
Right.
That we often miss out on the richness and spontaneity of life.
We're so busy trying to plan for every eventuality.
Right.
To control every outcome.
Yeah.
But the reality is that life is inherently unpredictable.
It is. And Manson suggests that embracing that uncertainty, that willingness to be surprised by life, can be incredibly liberating.
I love that.
It is, isn't it?
It allows us to be more present, more open to new experiences.
Right.
And more adaptable to the inevitable changes that life throws our way.
Exactly. It's not about being reckless or impulsive.
Right.
It's about recognizing that we can't plan for everything.
Yeah.
And that sometimes the most rewarding experiences come from those unexpected detours.
That's a great perspective. It's about surrendering to the journey.
Yes.
Trusting that even if things don't go according to plan,
right,
there's still beauty and meaning to be found in the unfolding of life.
I love that. And I think that's a perfect note to end on.
I think so, too. This has been such a great deep dive.
It has. We've covered so much ground.
So much. And this is just the tip of the iceberg, really.
Absolutely. There's so much more to explore in Manson's book.
Yeah. So if you're interested in learning more,
yeah,
I highly recommend checking it out.
Definitely give it a read.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into
It's been a pleasure.
The subtle art of not giving a feck. And until next time, keep exploring,
keep questioning,
and keep choosing what matters most to you.